I'm trying to get my thing. Well, I guess you'll have to hear me. To order for December 18th, including Varnell. I'll hand it over to Chairman Litterdale.
Thank you, sir. Tonight, I'd like to declare we do have a quorum. Mr. Perez is absent tonight. First order of business is to approve the minutes of the previous meeting. Any additions, corrections,
So moved.
motions?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Guys have it. Tonight, we do have 13 requests to deal with. 10 are in the county, 2 are zoning ordinance amendments, and 1 is in the city. Before we get to that, Mr. Ethan Calhoun will review the processes and procedures and requirements for those who'd like to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, out front on the table, you might have seen we have several papers out there, one being the agenda. If you'd like to get a copy of that, follow along tonight. Basically, the chairman, is the procedure for tonight's meeting, will introduce each of the items on the agenda. Once that item has been opened up, myself, representing staff, will come forward to the podium, give a quick presentation with a recommendation to approve or deny that particular request. Once my comments have been heard, the chairman will ask for the petitioner or that person who's requesting to rezone their property to come forward to the podium and make any statements or answer any questions that the Planning Commission or the Board of Commissioners may have. Once the petitioner has made their statements, the chairman will ask if anyone else is here tonight to speak in favor or in support of that particular item on the agenda. Once all comments in favor of that item have been heard, the chairman will ask if anyone would like to speak in opposition. By show of hands, how many people tonight are here to speak in opposition to a particular item on the agenda? It's very important that before you step up for that item, that out front on that table, you fill out one of the forms out front. We have 2, one for the county and one for the city. If you're not sure which item that you're going to speak in opposition is in the unincorporated county or city limits, you'll see that notified on the agenda. It will say at the end whether it's in the county or the city. Out front, you'll see those clearly labeled. Please sign your name. That's a state law requirement. And if you would do me a favor and clearly print your name so that when you make your statements, we can get your information correct in the public record. Before you approach the podium to make any statement in opposition, please make your way to this desk and drop off that form to me prior to addressing the Planning Commission and Board of Commissioners with your statements in opposition. Once all the opposition remarks have been heard, the chairman will give an opportunity to the petitioner to address any of the concerns that were raised in the opposition's remarks. And if during the petitioner's rebuttal no new information is presented, then the chairman will close that public hearing and move to the next item. And no further public comment will be heard on that particular agenda item. So the same process and procedure will take place for every item on the agenda. And the purpose for tonight's meeting is to hold a public hearing to hear comments for and against, to have those placed on the record and sent forward to the Board of Commissioners, Mayor and Councils, the City of Dalton, and the City of Varnell, where they will make a final decision at their next meetings in January. Mr. Chairman?
Thank you, Ethan. The first request is to hear from Eileen Kelly and Jean Finney to rezone from R2 to R5, parcel at 3529 Hurricane Road. This item is in the county. Ethan, shall I confirm that they're present on each one of these?
Yes, sir.
You're here? Okay. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As we see before us, this request to rezone from R2 and R5 to general agriculture. We can see the subject property here on the zoning map, currently zoned R2 and R5, proposing or requesting to be rezoned to general agriculture. Currently, what is being requested here is for the petitioner to be able to restore electrical service to 2 cottage dwellings on the subject property. And currently, as it stands, due to the shape and character of the subject property,
that the current zoning would not allow what's being proposed. This rezoning would allow the property to be rezoned to general agriculture, on which we can have 2 single-family detached dwellings on a single tract of land, which would satisfy the needs of the petitioner as it stands. And if we look at the zoning map and the subject property, you can see the R2, sort of the bright green color. You can see the dark green is the general agriculture, and of course, the sort of orange is the R5 rural residential. So we can see this low-density, primarily residential and agricultural character in this area on the zoning map, and the property to the north, of course, is adjacent to an existing GA zone district. If we look here, we'll see the makeup of the area currently in terms of development, and you can see again larger lots, mostly forested or agricultural style properties with some residential. And on the future development map, we see rural residential, which is of course intended to protect the rural and agricultural character of the area, which the GA zoning would accomplish perfectly. So we find no conflict from the staff's point of view, and well, we recommend approval. I'm happy to answer any questions.
No questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Kelly, Finney? Step up, please. Have anything you'd like to add, comments?
None, I think that was a great presentation.
Pretty much it?
Yes, sir, thank you.
Any questions here? All right, thank you, ma'am.
Great, thanks all.
Anybody else who'd like to speak in favor? Anybody who'd like to speak in opposition? That's it. We will close public portion on that request. Moving on to the next one. This one is to hear the recommendation regarding this request from the Whitfield County Board of Commissioners to amend the Unified Zoning Ordinance to address poultry and swine operations. Ethan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have a request here from all 3 participating governments in the Unified Zoning Ordinance to address commercial poultry and swine farming operations, and to create an opportunity for additional regulation for those uses. This originally arose at the level from the City of Varnell and the City of Dalton, requesting staff to look into this, to look at options and alternative measures to address this particular type of use. The staff went through this, I believe we presented on this last month at the meeting, and some discussion occurred for some clarification on a few things, one of those being the definitions and what the threshold would be for the definition of a commercial operation, and what separates that from a standard agricultural operation. That definition was drawn from the Environmental Protection Agency with the federal government, and the 2 definitions used to determine the threshold and whether or not a development would meet that threshold for commercial scale would be that if it is defined by the EPA as an animal feeding operation or a concentrated animal feeding operation. And animal feeding operations are defined as operations where animals are not out grazing naturally in pasture. That is where all their food has to be brought to the animals from outside. And concentrated animal feeding operations are measured by animal units. And so there's a threshold of animal units, and that is a language that works for all livestock from cattle, poultry, swine, and the EPA and USDA have those measurements. So in looking at any farm, it could be determined very easily whether or not that farm would qualify as an animal feeding or concentrated animal feeding operation. And that definition further specifically states how many months of the year the farm is in use, how many animal units would be present at any given point in time during the year. And all those being those definitions, should the EPA or USDA make any changes to those definitions, our ordinance would not have to be changed in referencing it in such a way. Next thing to mention very quickly and very importantly, this is to propose these uses be permitted by special use only. So as opposed to being outright allowed in general agriculture as they currently are, This would prompt special use review for anyone who is interested in proposing a commercial swine or poultry operation. They could still come before the Zoning Planning Commission and submit an application, propose their plan, and the Planning Commission and governing body could then review each of those and, if appropriate, permit them based on special use permit, which would be based on a site plan.
That's only for the cities.
And that is only for the city of Varnell and the city of Dalton.
So would one chicken house or one swine house fall into that category?
Animal feeding operation, yes, sir.
Okay. And these are the federal government's EPD, EPA guidelines?
That's correct.
So the
That's their
federal-
definitions, yes, sir.
Federal government
Yes, sir.
tells us what to do. Okay.
There's only new ones moving forward.
That's correct. Anything that's in existence today would be grandfathered or non-conforming.
And again, only within the city limits of Dalton or Varnell.
That's correct, yes, sir.
No other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I guess we open the floor to anybody has any favorable comments?
Chairman, I'm Terry Miller, city attorney for Varnell. Just a few comments. I hope these help. I don't have a lot. This issue became one for policy consideration by my client, the mayor and council of the city of Varnell, several weeks ago with a reported large, soon-to-be large-scale, I think it's since occurred, sale of acreage that is GA, General Agriculture, in the city. And it almost immediately drew widespread Varnell citizen interest and concern. And the mayor and council called a special meeting to consider this. I was consulted. We began to go to work to determine what was appropriate in the situation. Your county commission chairman, and I appreciate his presence, Mr. Jensen, even came to that meeting and knows the room was packed full of people, all who expect their mayor and council to review and deal with this. I can let the mayor speak, but in essence, we're not allowing the federal government to dictate anything. We're trying to find a definition that is bright, white, and black line, and that can be worked with by the planning staff in the future, by the planners, by the building inspectors to deal with this. We also were very aware, and it was made very clear by me and others at that meeting, public meeting, that this was not necessarily appropriate for the county at large, the unincorporated areas. We do not know presently, according to my administrator, of any, quote, chicken houses, and nothing against chicken houses, but in the city of Varnell proper, in the city limits. There are hundreds of acres of general agriculture, I understand from Ms. Garland and planning staff. And so what became an issue remains an issue. And it is, are these types of uses, these more intensive animal feeding operations is what the EPA and the USDA calls these, are they appropriate within the more insular, smaller community of Varnell? And I'm here really to speak for Varnell and not so much Dalton. The feeling by the mayor and council was that while countywide that may be good policy to not deal with this in general agriculture, they can't really not deal with it. You've got folks like Patterson Farms and other projects that are creating a community of folks that simply feel like these uses are both, as a matter of health and safety, incompatible, and you can get online and read vast amounts, and I'm no scientist, of literature about the methane gases and all the other problems and the environmental issues, which is why EPA has its hand in these regulations, both for animal feeding operations and concentrated animal feeding operations. I think it's the policy position of the mayor and council at Varnell that we would like to, at least as to Varnell, have these in general agriculture, if they're chicken houses, as Mr. Thomas said, or swine feeding lots, be a special use matter, which means it comes to the planners, it comes to you, and it comes to the city. And it's a legislative act of the city whether or not ultimately to approve such permits or such uses in general agriculture only within the city of Varnell. Now, I think a question was asked or comment made, I'm told, I wasn't here at the last meeting, well, the city can just go out and annex people. I can't remember when that has been done. It doesn't happen. The city has not used the 60% method to annex anybody in over 50 years that I'm aware of, and I stand to be corrected. I don't foresee that being an issue. But we do have several hundred acres of general agriculture in the city. This is important to the city, and there should be a way under this unified zoning ordinance to make these changes that are that important to one of your communities. Now, what is an animal feeding operation? Animals have been or will be stabled or confined and fed or maintained for a total of 45 days or more in any 12-month period, and that's that's defined by federal regulation of the EPA. And Mr. Calhoun is correct. These animals are not grazing; they're not foraging on the property like a cattle pasture. And so that's essentially what it is and what it isn't. It isn't intended for the entire county, but for the city. And I'll be happy to answer. We went back after the last meeting. I dug deeply with Gene Garland and Ethan Calhoun, and I think Mr. Calhoun is very aware of these issues all over Northwest Georgia, and has even done, I think, some presentations on it to planners around the state. And we felt like using a bright line regulatory definition would respond to any concerns about it being too broad. Commercial farming, commercial poultry. So I think we have it down to a level where Ms. Garland and that staff could work with it in the future. Thank you very much.
Just a minute, Mr. Miller. I don't remember the question about annexing other properties. Do y'all remember that you brought up? And how many, did you say hundreds of acres, Gene, in the city limits of Varnell? What's the exact number?
I just estimated, it's more than 100 of acres.
So the city council and mayor wants to be able to tell the farmers what they can do with their land. And there's hundreds and hundreds of acres apparently. I asked for that information at our last meeting, and someone was supposed to have gotten that for me, and I didn't receive it. But, you know, I think, and I'll be quiet after this, but as an American, you know, that's one of our most sacred rights, is to do with our land what we want to do, and it's on general agriculture. So y'all be careful what you wish on yourselves.
I don't take that's a question, but just a comment. Are there any questions?
Make a comment, I hope.
Oh.
Didn't you ask?
I didn't ask you anything,
Well,
John.
I asked you. So there you go. You
No, I don't
You
know.
inferred,
I didn't
you
infer anything.
inferred that it was brought up that
Oh,
property
okay.
may be annexed.
Yeah.
And you're going down the wrong road, Terry.
Okay,
Yeah, all right. Getting a little off track there.
yeah, I think so.
You want to apply a special use permit. That's, you're not looking for black and white definitions.
Well, we have a black and white definition.
So that
In,
would
in
qualify.
in the proposal that's before you tonight, this is much tighter than the definition that was before you last meeting. And, you know, if I've misstated anything about who asked what, I'm simply operating on information I've been given by my client, and that's fine.
So, looking for a little flexibility. Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Miller.
Thank you.
Anybody else would like to speak in favor?
Good evening. I'm Sandy Pangle. I am a resident of Varnell, also serve on the city council. As Mr. Miller said, the original catalyst for this whole discussion came with a quote-unquote million chicken operation. So I started doing some research. I think Mr. Miller may have even supplied that data to you. I'll be happy to share it if you want to sit through it. But I'd just like to point out that in Varnell, we have 2.5 square miles of total area of the city. That's it. Whitfield County has 291. So we're 0.8% of the physical area of Whitfield County. But we are 2.1% of the population. We're the fastest growing section of the county. We have people coming in. You've probably all seen the Patterson development. Very nice homes. We have other stuff going on in the city, and it's really, that area is growing, will prosper, and we want to see it continue to do so. Allowing someone to come in and put something that noxious in the middle of our city is not in the interest of our citizens. It's not in the interest of our environment. There's 2 waterways on that very property that this all started over that dump straight into Cola Creek. That's the city of Dalton's water supply. That's immense concern for me because there's a lot of runoff, and I'll be happy I won't take up your time, but please see me after the meeting, and I will share some scientific data taken right off the University of Georgia's website. It's accurate, it's real. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. All right, anybody would like to speak in opposition? Okay. That's it.
Did you say in opposition?
Yeah.
Okay.
And we will close the public portion. The next request is to hear from Shazman Ali to change from R2 to R5 on Antioch Road. This one is also in the county. Ethan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'll see the request before us here on the zoning map. Currently, the subject property is zoned low-density, single-family residential with a proposal or request to be rezoned to rural residential R5. And we'll look in just a moment at the petitioner's specific proposed development for the subject property, but currently just looking at zoning in this area and what change this would make to the zoning map. You can see the bright green color in the center of the map being the R2 zone district as it exists currently. And if you'll note, just south of the subject property, or sort of southwest, the subject property wraps around a small neighborhood zoned R2. And I'll just make a quick note that most of the lots in that adjacent development to the southwest of the subject property are of the lot size and characteristic more so of the medium density zone district than R2. So a number of those are actually non-conforming in terms of lot size, but all the lots in that adjacent development are single-family detached dwellings that were site-built. Looking around the subject property, other zone districts, there's some general commercial zoning to the north, heavy manufacturing to the east and west, and rural residential to the south. Here we can see the existing development in this area, and of course, this is in an area that we see industrial and manufacturing development. But again, looking around the subject property itself, there are more single adjacent tracts of land that are occupied by low-density, single-family detached dwellings. And the subject property is currently undeveloped. There's a closer look again at some of those neighboring properties. You can see the immediate adjacency of numerous single-family detached dwellings. Here we can see an issue with the subject property that likely illustrates why we don't see much development on this property currently, and that is the fact that both the floodway and flood zone affect this property, and you can see those in the various overlays on the map on the screen, from the crosshatched area being the floodway, and then as well as the flood zone. In the future development map, we can see the suburban neighborhood character area. And the intent of that character area is to ensure that any additional residential development in the suburban areas be reflective of the established development patterns in such a way as not to create any change in character that would be significant enough to really have a negative impact on the existing development.
Just a real quick question. Look, on that particular screen there, just to the east of the site, I believe, that's the Aladdin plant across the road? Is that the Aladdin facility?
Yes.
I think so.
Why
Yes,
would
sir.
that be in emerging suburban when it's heavy manufacturing?
Well, with this area, we've got a lot of different things kind of coming together, and this lies in one of the issues with long-range land use planning in certain areas where you have kind of a convergence between two different land uses. So
So
in
can
terms
you go
of
back to
that,
the slide that's got the aerial? Yeah, I mean, that whole thing there is heavy. It just seems odd to me that that's manufacturing, is own manufacturing, but the land use plan shows emerging suburban.
right, well, with it, and of course, with any existing development, much like in zoning, that the future plans, as you can see around that, there's a fair amount of residential, so general land use planning is for long-range land use planning, and a comprehensive plan is fairly general on a county level. So when you get in these areas where you have convergences like this, it's not uncommon to see that. But again, we can see it's also adjacent to emerging suburban, as you pointed out as well. And so what we see here is residential character. With the existing zoning, what could this allow as far as a change in the property? And it would essentially allow the addition of duplexes, which the petitioner has proposed on the attached site plan, which I believe you should all have a copy of. So this proposed development is moving all the proposed new lots to be created far to the west side of the property, where it's as close to the property line as possible, which would affect the adjacent neighborhood that has been established. And when we look at the petitioner's proposal, we can see here those lots. There are, for the most part, all smaller lots that are single-family detached dwellings that would fit the lot size that is established in that area, as well as the building type being single-family detached. The difference is that there are a few lots that are showing duplexes on this proposed site plan, and there are no duplexes in the adjacent subdivision, so this would bring in that multifamily character. Ultimately, the staff recommendation, based on the existing land use and what effect this could have on the established neighborhood, recommendation from staff is not to approve the R5 rezoning, but as opposed to leaving it as R2, which is very conservatively zoned given the adjacent development and the character of the property itself, to recommend a medium-density residential, or R3 rezoning, which would allow the same lot density for single-family detached development, but would not permit manufactured homes or duplexes. And that would be in character with what exists, and it would give the petitioner/developer the flexibility to develop some of those smaller lots.
Questions? Ellen? Yep. Thank you, Ethan.
Thank you.
How many duplexes are actually,
What, 5?
how many?
Two, I think, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 total proposed.
10 units, 5 duplexes.
Correct.
you, Ethan. Anybody who'd like to speak in favor? Obviously. Mr. Ali?
Good evening.
Mr. Ali?
Yes, sir, that's me. I actually did read the report, and I did message Gene Garland about it. I would be okay with R3 zoning. So if I could request the R3 instead of R5.
We can do that. Thank you. Very good.
And not do the duplex. Correct. Single family. So, single family in places.
It would just be the 7,500 square foot lot. So current, it would require like 15,000.
So you're okay with that?
Yes.
Anybody else like to speak in favor? And Mr. Ali is willing to change it to R3. Does anybody would like to speak in opposition? Very good. We'll close the public portion on that request. The next one is to hear from Jerry and Barbara Hawkins to change from R5 to C2 to expand an adjacent commercial operation. Are the Hawkins here, just to be sure?
Yep, those are-
Okay, very good. Ethan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We can see the request here to be rezoned, or the subject property to be rezoned from rural residential to general commercial, and looking at a tract of approximately 10 acres on Old Field Road. And currently, the subject property is undeveloped, and the petitioner's request is made to be able to utilize the subject property for the expansion of an established existing commercial operation. So when we look at the existing zoning and what effect this could have on the zoning map, you'll see that the subject property is zoned R5. You'll see that same orange color adjacent to the southwest. And that'd be the R5 zone district, and you can see it throughout this area. You also see the general agriculture zone district over across the highway to the east. You see low-density single-family residential to the north, and you see heavy manufacturing to the south and to the west. So we've got a mix, another area of convergence between several different zone districts. So when we look at the established land use for this area, you can see we've got a fair amount of undeveloped land, but we can also see a convergence of industrial, commercial, and various residential densities all occurring in this general area. And again, looking at the subject property currently undeveloped, but adjacent and to the east, you can see the petitioner's existing business. Closer look at the subject property and the adjacent commercial operation. The petitioner can answer in more detail about exactly what their business is in character of, but based on the aerial photograph and looking at the subject property is related to commercial truck trailers. And so this potential rezoning would allow for the subject property, if it's approved, to be expanded upon by this existing commercial operation. It is worth pointing out that as with any commercial zoning district, anywhere that the subject property borders residential zoning, there would be a required buffer. Here we have a look at the future development map and the comprehensive plan. And due to the proximity to the interchange of I-75, you can see that this sort of pink color on the screen is labeled interchange. That character area is intended to recommend commercial, industrial type uses generally, and higher density residential that would be advantageous to be in proximity to the interstate interchange. And next, just a quick thing to mention, based on the existing land use future development plan zoning in this area, the staff can make a recommendation to approve provided one additional condition be required, and that is to require a buffer along the northern boundary of the subject property. So if I back up here to look at the subject property, you can see that the northern portion of this property is fronted by the street, and across the street you can see some of that residential development. Generally speaking, properties are not required to buffer where there is a public road that separates them from other existing development. So in this case, there would be no buffer required there if this rezoning were approved without a special condition. That condition would address that to help protect the adjacent residential development to the north. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Gary and Barbara Hawkins? Hawkins?
I'd just like to say that the reason that I'm needing this is because we have tractors and trailers like he said and everything, and we're needing more room to park them. That's what we're after. I mean, I know we'd have to, whatever you need us to do, I mean, we'd be willing. But now on that back part of that up there, which is they're growing like pine trees in there, and part of ours joined that there. With a buffer, could you come back from, on our property and just leave the trees that growing? Cause that's a pine thicket.
That would qualify as a buffer?
You're talking about on the western end of the property, the back, the western?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think Ethan was talking about the northern end, close to the,
He was talking about that, and he was talking about along the road there.
Yes.
Which that doesn't call for it, but then go back to I guess the west of it there, that's in a pine thicket.
it's a natural buffer.
Yeah. In fact, when we bought that, we went in there and cleared part on our side up to basically his line, the property line there. And that's what go ahead.
Okay, but you wouldn't have a problem with the northern part next to the road? Creating a buffer there,
On the northern part,
next to the road?
Fields Road.
oh, I wouldn't have no problem with it, but I mean, the road is there on fields. I mean, I could just leave it where, if I had to, just where they would, let the normal stuff take the vegetation or something like that.
I just don't know how tall is that?
Well, you'd have to cut it with a big tractor and
It's
stuff, yeah. It's not just where you drive in there.
Well, we know it's gonna be, an industrial complex if we ever get off of the frontage, because we've been offered $7 million already, and we don't wanna disrupt this elderly couple that have been living there for years. So we have a company that has really been ragging him, wanting to buy that property, and, he said, no, I can't make those people move. So I know that there's gonna be some growth in that area because of all the people that are contacting him trying to buy that frontage off of, South Dixie or 41. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else like to speak in favor? Anybody like to speak in opposition? Very well, we'll close the public portion on that request. The next request is to hear from Jamie White, requesting C2 to R5 and C2, Ethan? I'm not sure about what that,
Mr. Chairman?
0.41 acres, a duplex.
Yes, sir, I can address that. This request was made to rezone the subject property from general commercial to R5 and C2. Simply put, this would be rezoning a portion of the subject property to rural residential R5, leaving a portion of the subject property to remain general commercial. And the petitioner's request was made based on their desire to construct a duplex on a portion of the subject property, I believe on the west end of the subject property. We'll look at a site plan in just a moment to make this make a little more sense. Based on the existing zoning, you can see on the map along Cleveland Highway running north to south, you'll see that bright red color. That's the general commercial zone district, which currently is covering the subject property and a number of the adjacent properties and most of what we see adjacent to Cleveland Highway in this area. We see low-density, single-family residential in the bright green, and general agriculture just to the east, which you'll note is marked for Edwards Park. So while it's zoned for agriculture, it has a public park on it. So again, here we see development in this area, and you can see commercial, you can see the park complex to the east, and again, a commercial directly across the east of Cleveland Highway. Close look at the subject property. You can see here there was formerly a single-family detached dwelling near the corner of the lot toward the Cleveland Highway. And we can see here emerging suburban character areas. So this represents areas in the county that are mostly residential but could accommodate additional residential growth. And when we look at the subject property, the request that's being made is to take a portion of the property that's zone C2 and rezone that for rural residential, which would allow the construction of a duplex. Given the adjacency of the commercial development and commercial zoning in this area, increasing residential density is a more reasonable request in a position like this as opposed to previous requests. So again, looking closely at subject property, while there's commercial zoning to the east and some development to the west, this would only affect a portion of the property, which we can see here on their proposed plat, which you can see that the portion of the property being requested for the duplex would be the one further to the west. The corner portion of the lot along Cleveland Highway would remain general commercial as proposed. Staff recommendation is that this request can be approved as requested. Happy to answer any questions.
Appear to be none. Thank you, sir. Jamie White? Comments, additions?
No, I think you did well. Just purchased property, want to split it to put a duplex, just to, actually on the property across the street on the east side. So, on the body shop there that's on the other side, so just trying to make it look a little bit better. That house has been empty for as long as I can remember, so just trying to make value of the property.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Anybody else like to speak in favor?
We've had a lot of trouble in that area there with swampy area.
Are you speaking in favor, sir? Okay. Anybody else like to speak in favor? Are you speaking in opposition? Okay, please step up.
We've had a lot of swampy
Come on up, please.
in that area.
Sir, come on up to the microphone. The microphone.
We've had a problem there over the years. I've owned that for several years. And it's real swampy in there. And if you try to put something there, it's going to create a problem with the swampy, this on both areas. I'm the property just north of them there. It's just, that's my main concern, is it's swampy, and I think any additional buildings put in there to do anything is going to make it worse. And that's just my comment on it.
You understand he's putting a home or
Pardon me?
he's putting a duplex in there?
He's putting a duplex and another little house, I think, or some kind of a little house there.
Or just a duplex, I think?
Yeah,
All right. Well, thank you, sir.
okay.
If there are no other comments, we'll close that request. Excuse me? That was a rebuttal?
You need a rebuttal?
I thought he, does anybody else have a rebuttal? Oh, rebuttal? No.
Jamie.
Yeah. Jamie, do you have anything to say about the swampiness? I mean, he has to go through building permits anyhow.
Yeah, and, I mean, I'm gonna be invested in sewer, so, I mean,
Okay.
you know, so I'm not, I don't think it's a big issue.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next request is from Gabriel Paniagua, seeking to rezone from R2 to GA. Parcel 6.59 acres at 256 Lakewood Drive. This one is in the county also.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have a request here to be rezoned from general agriculture, or from low-density, single-family residential being requested to be rezoned to general agriculture. Currently, we can see the subject property is within the low-density, single-family R2 zone district. You can see that bright green color is a very consistent zone district throughout this area. And the subject property itself being just large enough, just exceeding the minimal requirement of 5 acres for general agriculture, with the subject property being a little over 6.5 acres. So it is eligible to be rezoned for general agriculture. And when we look at the zoning map, while the subject property is within this R2 zone district, we see just very near to the north the general agriculture zone district, with the subject property being very close by. Again, looking at existing development in this area, what we see here is kind of an area of convergence between the suburban-style residential growth and development spurring from Cleveland Highway over to the west, moving eastward where we see a reduction in density and development and a more agricultural character. So you can see while some of that property adjacent to the subject property was zoned for low-density, single-family residential, its current use is part of a large farm just to the east of the subject property, and you can see a number of poultry houses and pasture land in immediate proximity. Closer look at the subject property, you can see that there is a single-family detached dwelling, and very similar to other properties that we see coming before us. This request is being made not with the intent to develop a farm or to utilize a subject property for farming practice, but rather to have the ability to have a second single-family detached dwelling on attractive land that otherwise could not be subdivided because there is only a very, very small amount of public road access. So this is the only remedy in order to permit a second single-family dwelling. And this property, at some point in time in the past, did have a second home, a manufactured home, that has lost its nonconforming status. So this would allow the subject property to have a second single-family detached dwelling. Looking at the future development map, we see the pink color on the map representing the emerging suburban character area, again representing areas that could see additional residential development. Based on the inability to subdivide the subject property, the general agriculture zone district would allow the addition of a second home. We see no negative impact in terms of how that would have a negative impact on any of the adjacent residential development. And of course, the property is too small for any intensive agricultural practice that would have any threat to the subject or to the adjacent residential properties. Staff see no issue with this particular rezoning and recommend approval. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Questions? Thank you. Mr. Paniagua? our spokesman?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, Mr. Paniagua?
Yeah.
Okay. Comments?
Doesn't really speak that
Okay,
much English.
understand.
No, we just wanted to be able to restore the light on that trailer on the,
Is the trailer still there?
yeah, he's still there. We
Okay.
just wanted to fix it up, and it's been a while without electricity.
Okay, so more than a year you have to get this. Questions? All right, thank you. Gentlemen? Anybody else would like to speak in favor? Anybody like to speak in opposition? That said, close that request. The next request is here from Megan Elliott, seeking to rezone from R2 to GA, parcel at 2011 Old Whaley Road. This one is also in the county. Sir?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The current rezoning is another request to go from low-density, single-family residential to general agriculture. Again, we see that bright green color for R2, low-density, single-family residential. And the proposed rezoning would change the subject property to that dark green color we see on the zoning map, which is the general agriculture zone district. So we do see general agriculture as a zone district in the near vicinity. When we look at the subject property, we also see it's adjacent to multifamily over to the west, as well as rural residential to the north, which share some characteristics with general agriculture in terms of types of residential development. So in terms of the zoning map, this would, while it would create a small island of general agriculture surrounded by other residential zone districts, we can see that general agriculture is not an unusual zone district for this area. So this would not introduce any sort of new character to the area. As you'll notice, the subject property has a unique shape, which leads to the issue of being able to have and use the farm or use the subject property as a farm, or to eventually add a second dwelling. So we see existing development in the area, much like the zoning map. We see a mix of residential densities and some larger agricultural appearing lots. And it's close up of the subject property. You can see again, it's a unique shape. It's had a number of divisions over the years. And the future development map shows this property to be within the rural residential character area, which again is a character area intended to protect or preserve sort of that more rural and agricultural character of the county. So based on all those factors, the staff can give a recommendation to approve, not citing any issues, other than should there be any interest in a condition to prohibit, again, those concentrated animal feeding operations. Based on the size and shape of the lot, this would be highly unlikely due, again, to the layout of the subject property. But given the amount of residential development, it may be something worth considering should there be a concern. Aside from that, staff have no additional comments and recommend approval. Be glad to answer any questions.
None? In fact, wait a minute.
The lot to the west was high density, but I didn't see but like 2 or 3 homes there, is that right?
With high-density development, sometimes multiple homes, what that does is create, you can have multiple single-family homes, manufactured homes, things like that, on a high-density residential lot, and you can see the access easement accessing those. So, yes, you are correct. It's not an apartment complex, but multiple single-family.
Very tightly populated, okay.
Right.
Thank you, Ethan.
Thank you.
Megan Elliott?
I don't really have much to add other than it's just been a family farm for my great-grandparents, my grandparents, my family. I was born and raised there, and we're just looking at getting it as a, it's been a working farm forever. So it's just, we're just changing it back to G2 for that, or general agriculture, excuse me.
Okay, you understand the restrictions he was talking about?
Yes, yes, no intentions of ever having chicken, chicken houses or any, swine.
Okay. All right, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Anybody would like to speak in favor? Anybody who'd like to speak in opposition? That's it. Very good. We'll move on to the next request. Next request is from Jose Gomez, seeking from R5 to C2 at 2071 Freeport Road to be used as used car sales.
Make sure they're here.
Yeah, Jose Gomez, you here? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'll take a look at the subject property. Again, the request to be rezoned from rural residential, R5, to general commercial, RC2. And you can see the subject property is a small tract of land, just approximately 1/3 of an acre. We can see that property on the center of the zoning map there, lying at the, as a corner lot to the two streets. And the request in this case is being made in order to take the subject property, which was formerly used as a church, and convert the property to be utilized for used car sales. In order to do that, the C2 zone district would need to be the zone district used at this location for the used car lot. And if we take a look at the zoning map, what we'll see in this case is no adjacent commercial zoning of any kind. All adjacent zone districts are residential. We do see to the north and south some spot zones of heavy manufacturing zone districts, but we do not see any consistent commercial or manufacturing zones in this area. Again, looking at the existing development in the area, again, smaller lots, residential, some cul-de-sac suburban development, and low-density residential being the most prominent land use in this area, which agrees with the zoning map. Close look at the subject property, you can see the existing structure, which was, I believe, masonry construction and was recently utilized as a church, which would be permitted through special use in most all our residential zone districts, most specifically the R5, which is which is how the subject property is currently zoned. Just a couple of things to point out that as the property is adjacent to the residential zoning to the north and residential development to the north, any development on this property would spur a required buffer along the northern portion of the subject property. And if you'll note, the existing structure that is there lies close to the lot line to the north, likely too close to be able to establish a proper buffer based on our zoning standards, and would also begin to eat away at the potential lot area because no buffer can be utilized for driveways or particularly parking areas and things of that nature. So that would create a little bit more difficulty on this property in regard to utilizing it for commercial purpose. Looking at the future development map, we see that it is another emerging suburban character area. You can also see the suburban existing residential development on the future development map. And what we do not see is the community activity center or any other future development character areas that would justify a general commercial rezoning in this area because, again, general commercial is our most intensive commercial zoning. So this would constitute a spot zone and create an island of commercial zoning and development that would be entirely surrounded by residential development. So the staff recommendation is not to approve the rezoning, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Good. Thank you, Ethan.
Thank you.
Mr. Gomez?
Please speak for me.
Yes.
I would just like to say we acquired this property a couple of years ago. It's
according to the, like the tax assessor's office, it was a commercial property. When it was first built, it was built as a convenience store. So that was really never been a residential property, even when it was first built. It was a convenience store for many years. It's an older property. And lately, it's been it was used as a church. So it has been vacant, but as far as, you just have pretty much it's a small lot, kind of like a warehouse. There's not really any rooms inside. So that was our intent. That's what it says, there's a commercial. So we were surprised to find out it's not a commercial, even though it does say, we did bring some of the copies from the tax assessors where it shows it's commercial. We can, I don't know, who wants to see it?
I trust you're correct. I know what you're looking at.
Yeah. So our intent was to we do need a place, we need a lot to sell cars, used cars. So our intent is to park the cars, I don't know if you can go back to the other screen, down to the side of the road on Hague Mill. There.
Y poquito más arriba si hay propiedades, si hay comerciales, poquito más arriba.
On the corner of the intersection.
Right, what he's saying is, above that, there is some commercial properties there, close to it, when you cross the railroad tracks. Over there, it's pretty close, there's a commercial property there. Kiss, what do they have?
Shop de carros, Davidson.
It's like a car shop, mechanic, commercial.
But it hasn't operated anything commercial since you've had it.
Since we've had it, it's been vacant.
Been vacant. You do understand that what he was talking about, a buffer on the north side of the building?
You understand, you're talking about close to the other property?
Yeah. So, I mean, you couldn't do anything on that side because this
Right.
property line's too close.
Right, so our intent was to do it, just pointing at Hague Mill, park the cars there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I think the building is almost on the lot line, so even if this were approved for commercial, you would have to have a buffer where that building is at. Is that correct, Ethan?
That's the way, it would put the building in non-conforming status, meaning it encroaches on a setback and buffer.
You'd have to buffer where the building wasn't then?
And you couldn't expand the building.
Mm-hmm. How big is that building, square footage now?
140.
1440.
1440.
1,400?
1440.
1,440? Looks bigger.
Ujú.
Okay, other questions?
Y para tener un carro, un dealer de carros, no necesitas grande tierra, solo necesitas
Yeah,
una oficina.
we need that to have pretty much like an office area
You know, for
to
car
run
business,
a Carla.
for car
We-
business, you don't need a big lot, you know? You need a main office.
Mm-hmm.
The office, you need some space only. Más o menos.
It has use for you.
Ujú.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Dile que sí una recomendación o algo.
Any recommendations? I know he said he recommends
The only-
not approving. Do you recommend something different?
Dile porque el estado de Georgia puede poner un dealer de carros en casas particulares, se puede. Por eso dile.
The same issues would still persist even with neighborhood zoning, given the building's position on the property. So it's gonna be difficult to find a use for the building in a commercial sense. Buffer would still have to be created even in neighborhood commercial. Neighborhood commercial would allow for less expansive commercial uses in C2.
Did it once operate as a convenience store?
It was built, it was been many years. I got I went into the tax assessor's office and printed that out, like,
Mhm.
yeah, it was, they called it, like a neighborhood market.
Yeah. So,
No, roadside market, I mean. Yeah, it hasn't, in many years, it has not.
so it could be C1 or possibly.
I've been there since '98 and it's always been a church.
Yeah. Okay. No further questions? No. Okay, thank you. Anybody else like to speak in favor? Anybody like to speak in opposition? Well, he's already standing, let him, come on. Have you given paperwork to him?
No.
The area, as far as it being a store, I recall my neighbor, like, I've lived there, like she said, since '98. And my neighbor said that it was a convenience store years ago, and they tried to sell alcohol there. And everybody opposed that because of the type of people that would bring in. And as far as that being a car lot, I guess to try and go further down, you could try to put cars there, but runoff's always going through. You always have the creek, the springs. So how would that affect, the water around it, everybody's springs and stuff like that? As well as the community is very, we're very tight-knit. You know people from, their nannies and papaws and buddies here and there. So what kind of people would that bring around the area? But yeah.
Thank you, sir.
I'm Gary Brown. I actually own the property 2 doors up from it. Right there is 2079 Freeport Road. My son lives in the house right there, and but the store itself, or the church building that's there on the corner, it's not had anything in there. I was raised at Pleasant Grove all my life on it right there, and that store has been shut down since '76. So it's not had a store in there, but it has had a church in there. They had a special use permit to be able to use the church, as a church building and a church environment during that time. That's, the property itself has not got any potential of where you can get a buffer on the north side of it, going on up north to Mr. Long's property, Brian next door, or on up to ours up through there. The property is very wet. It is very unusable. If they, as far as the part of it using as a church, it was, converted over to that. It used to be Arthur Black's grocery store, and it was there from, probably in the 50s all the way up until '76 only. And then once he passed away, it all went away, and the property sat empty. But, it's not anything, it's not potentially usable for a car lot. I mean, that may be what somebody's gonna do, but you put one car in, every time you go to move one car, you gotta move 9 to get it out of the way, and you ain't got room enough for 9 cars up there. The road right on the front of it, if you notice, the right-of-way on that road right there is set back as a pretty good little gravel space, but you don't own it. That's the right-of-way, that's the county right-of-way on it right there. You can't use the right-of-way as part of that property on it right there. So I would highly recommend that we do not pass that. If they want to use it as church, or if they want to face the front of it, take it off and make a residential house out of it, that's perfectly fine. Get your own sewer up there, or own septic tank system up there, and there's nowhere that you can park cars that you're not going to be either sitting on your field lines or on your septic tank. So we would ask that you totally turn it down.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Gomez, do you want to rebut? All right. We shall close that request. Next request is from Chris Talent Jr. to rezone from R7 to C2. 1.18 acres along the Cleveland Highway for a small landscaping business. Landscaping supply business.
I think you skipped one.
I did.
Vernon Gordon was next.
I skipped somebody. Where'd he go? You want to hold off, back up one? Apparently I skipped one.
Yes.
Vernon Gordon.
Okay, Vernon Gordon. Missing that one. seeking to rezone from suburban agriculture SA to rural residential R5, 1271 Dawnville Road. This is in the county.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Take a look at the subject property. It's another unique shaped property with limited access to the public road along Dawnville Road. And currently, the property is zoned suburban agriculture and is being proposed or requesting to be rezoned to rural residential. The petitioner's request is made in order to have an additional dwelling to be occupied by a relative of the petitioner. And the way that this could be accomplished would be to through the family easement subdivision process. The issue is that without an R5 rezoning, then that proposed additional tract of land or proposed tract of land to be divided from the subject property would have to be a minimum of 3 acres. And the petitioner would propose to divide a smaller lot for their family member. So in order for them to be able to do that and to carve a lot smaller than 3 acres, they would need to be rezoned to rural residential. In this case, as the other prominent zone district throughout this area. So we see the general agriculture zone district and the dark green color on the zoning map. This rezoning, if it's approved, would change that color to that orange, which we see just to the east and south of the subject property. We see a lot of commercial development along Dawnville Road in this area. While Dawnville is not an incorporated area, it is somewhat of a community center with a lot of neighborhood commercial uses, as well as some multifamily housing. We can see some transitional residential R6 zoning adjacent to the subject property as well. Here we can see existing development, so you can see a larger size of the subject property, and you can see a lot of those commercial rooftops along Dawnville Road. Again, closer look at the subject property. It does have an existing single-family dwelling. And we can see in the future development map when the rural residential character area, the change from general agriculture to rural residential at this location would not alter the character of the area. And again, based on the limited ability of this property to be subdivided, this is not going to change. It's going to have a very nominal impact on the lot density in this area. So one small tract could be carved from the subject property, and the petitioner could allow their relative to own their own piece of property. Based on no negative impact assessed, staff recommendation is to approve as requested. Be glad to answer any questions.
None? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Vernon Gordon?
My name's Keith Gordon. I'm going to speak on my dad's behalf. He's hard of hearing.
Okay.
Dad's plan is to just provide a couple of lots for granddaughters to build houses. I own property that is adjacent to this. It's a gorgeous piece of property. Got a really nice view of the mountains. He's just trying to look out for his girls.
Questions? Thank you. Anybody else would like to speak in favor? Anybody like to speak in opposition? Is there one in the back?
Good evening. My name's Roy Painter. I own the piece of property just north of the site. I have no problem with them going from commercial or from agricultural to residential, but I didn't understand why it needed to go to R5. Could they not do R2 or R3?
You couldn't do R2? They'd have to subdivide?
thought they were wanting to subdivide 3 acres.
17 total.
17 acres, so.
So R2 would accomplish the same thing, or, well, it would accomplish a slightly larger lot, and you couldn't have manufactured homes.
You couldn't?
Could not.
Could not.
So R5, as they requested, you could have a manufactured home.
Okay. Your question is why?
Well, if they were just wanting to build a couple of family residents on the property, why would it need to be R5 that could accommodate mobile homes?
Yeah, but that can happen on suburban agriculture, can't it?
You can have manufactured homes for,
Or, but more than one home.
you could just have more tracks.
Okay. So could they do this and stay the same?
If they created 3-acre tracks.
Okay. It sounds like they'd have to subdivide. Okay. Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Anybody would like to speak in opposition?
Hey, my name is Jeremy Mooney. I own property to the north of it also. I couldn't understand what was being said at the last part, but my concern would be once they zone it for R5, I mean, even though I wouldn't have no problem with him putting just some family houses on, but once it's zoned R5, then if he sells it, then they could move in, you know, a mobile home park or duplexes or something. That would be my concern. And then I'm afraid that would hurt our value and the people that would bring in.
Entire area.
Understood? Okay,
Thank
thank you. Mr. Gordon, would you like to rebut?
The property that joins ours is, already has rental property on it. It's a lot of duplexes and, single-family dwellings. It's not our intention to do anything like that. We just need a place for the granddaughters to build a house and have a nice place.
Do you understand what we're talking about subdividing? I mean,
Sure.
If you considered alternatives to R5?
If we needed to.
Okay.
Restriction, they couldn't be manufactured homes, would you be okay with that?
Oh, definitely. Definitely okay with no manufactured homes and even no duplexes.
No.
That's not our intention at all.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you. That said, we move on to, make sure I get it right, Chris Talent.
Yep, you got it now.
All right, the next request is Chris Talent Jr. to rezone from R7 to C2, 1.18 acres along Cleveland Highway for a small landscaping supply business in the county. Ethan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We can see the request here, another request to be rezoned from residential to commercial, in this case, high-density residential to general commercial. So the subject property, not too terribly long ago, was rezoned to high-density residential. The proposal to develop a small multifamily development on the subject property. Property has since been sold, and the petitioner before us has begun operations on the subject property, or began an expansion on the subject property of his adjacent business operation, which is landscaping supplies. And based on the existing zoning, no commercial use of this property can occur outside of residential. And therefore, in order for the petitioner to utilize the property as they have chosen to, they will need to be rezoned to general commercial. And when we look at the existing zoning in this area, you'll see adjacent to the south, general commercial, and that adjacent property to the south is owned by the petitioner or occupied by the petitioner. And across the highway to the east, you'll see heavy manufacturing. And to the north, you'll see one lot of single-family, low-density residential, R2, and then more general commercial to the north. So this rezoning would change the subject property from R7 to C2, and you can see that it is adjacent to a well-established general commercial zone district. Next, we see existing development in the area. Most folks are probably familiar with this area, Cleveland Highway, lots of convergence between commercial and residential. At this particular location, the majority property that we see adjacent is manufacturing or commercial as opposed to residential. However, the properties to the north that are currently zoned and developed for residential purposes, any potential use of the subject property would require a buffer, just like on any other commercial property where it's adjacent to residential zoning. And that would affect essentially the entire northern boundary of the subject property. Again, here a close look of the property. Currently, the petitioner does have some materials that have been set on the property, so the aerial photograph does not represent exactly how the property reflects currently. There is also a small pole barn that was constructed on the subject property. But there again, you can see to the north where we are adjacent to residential dwellings, there would be a required buffer, minimum of 20 feet at that portion of the property. Here we see the subject property is within the Community Activity Center in the comprehensive plan. The Community Activity Center, of course, is recommending of higher density residential development as well as commercial development. So based on the future development map, there is no conflict with the proposed rezoning. The recommendation from staff is that the rezoning be approved with the understanding that the buffers would be required to address and mitigate any issues that might affect some of those residential properties to the north. Be happy to answer any questions.
None, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Talent?
I don't have much comment. I did go ahead and install the buffer roughly halfway from, you kind of see where the yellow and purple meet there. There's planted trees going to the west from there, but I am requesting that the area back towards Cleveland Highway not put a buffer. The house that's there, they park in that area and turn around. They don't have a lot of space there to turn around. If I plant trees all down the buffer, then it'll take up where they park at. And I've got some pictures if you want to see that.
Can you go back to that overhead slide if you could?
So you're saying you allow them to encroach, not a
Right.
good word, but
Well, yeah.
give them a right-of-way or easement to come park or turn around.
Yeah, they don't have a lot of space there, so when they back out, they back onto my property. If I run the buffer all the way out, then that'll prevent them from doing that. I don't have a problem doing it, it's just gonna
It's gonna hurt them.
take, I mean, it's gonna take away their turnaround spot.
I think, do we even have that authority? Ethan, you think we've got that authority to waive the buffer?
Jean's got her hand up.
I mean,
Well,
Gene,
that's a commercial property anyway, so why would it?
When it comes to the Board of Commissioners, they have the authority to waive the buffer if the comprehensive plan says the adjacent property is planned for use in the future, which, as you'll see on the comp plan, it is
mhm,
the area that he's talking about. So you may not
okay.
have that authority.
Thank you, Gene. All right, thanks, sir. Anybody else who would like to speak in favor? Anybody like to speak in opposition? You have have paperwork for?
Oh, I don't fill it yet.
Excuse me?
I don't fill the paper.
If you're speaking in opposition, you need to fill
Yeah.
the paperwork?
I don't fill it yet. Do you want me to fill it?
No, you have to.
Yeah, you need to, before you speak.
All right. So you want me to fill it first and then?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Well,
You need to know his opposition, though.
yeah, but if you're, does anybody else like to speak in opposition? Just put your name and. He's the only one. That's close enough. All right,
Sorry about that.
no problem.
All right. I own the house, the one on the corner right there. And I don't know if they can do something because they start bringing like dirt, a lot of dirt, and when it rains, all the water, the muddy water runs through my backyard, and they start bringing like they say organic soil that smells bad, and you can be outside with the kids, or you can do nothing on your backyard like cook out or something, because it smells bad, and you can like they don't have that thing on the back of their houses, so.
So you have a runoff problem, or it's mostly just the
Mostly
smell?
it's the smell.
of the organics.
Yeah, and when it rains, all the muddy water runs through my backyard. And when they start working with the machines, all the dust blows through everywhere. And what do they do? Just they plant a line of trees, but they don't hold the smells, the water, even the dust. Thank you.
Thank you. Corner, I think. Which one? That's right, the house on the corner.
That's what I'm thinking.
Okay. All right, that closes the public portion on that one. What?
Rebuttal.
Oh, yeah, I can
Chris, an
rebuttal.
opportunity to address that.
Rebuttal?
We did install the trees that I had said, and we also installed a retention pond for any of the water runoff. It's on the north side. It's a ditch, basically, and then we're gonna filter any of the water that runs through there to address that.
Okay, so are you gonna divert the water, or just?
No, we're not diverting anything. We're just, that's the way I don't think we have that map, but that's the way the water goes.
Mhm.
We're just collecting the water so that it's not the silt running through there. Right, right.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Moving on. Now. Ready? Next issue is to hear from Brigado Meza Flores for a special use permit for a tract of land on general agriculture, 22 acres at 148 Livingston Way. Are they here?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This request would not be for a rezoning, but rather for a special use permit. That special use permit specifically for an event center on the subject property. Based on the subject property's current zoning for general agriculture, this would be an option to pursue. And so, a bit of history, the subject property previously was zoned low-density single-family residential like the majority of the adjacent property that you see surrounding the subject property. The subject property had been requested to rezone general agriculture due to the fact that there was a second dwelling on this property, and the petitioner previously had required or requested to rezone in order to complete construction or reconstruction, remodeling of that second dwelling. And upon receiving this general agriculture rezoning, that enabled him to do so. One of the issues, of course, the larger size of the subject property, over 20 acres, could have been divided to accomplish this. But one of the issues that existed was the fact that no public road access exists to the subject property, and it's only currently accessed by one of two private drives through access easement. And you can see those to the north on the red dotted lines. And so this was the only way that the subject property could be zoned in order to have those two single-family detached dwellings. Say all that history just to point out that is why the subject property received a general agriculture rezoning, but and that, of course, creates the potential for a special use permit to be given for an event center. Again, looking at the surrounding zoning, you see the R2 low-density single-family residential. We can see as a landmark just to the south, Dalton Golf and Country Club Golf Course. And here we can see an example or an aerial photograph of the existing development. Again, we see mostly suburban-style development. The subject property itself notably larger than most all the other adjacent residential properties to the north, east, and west. And here we see the future development map showing this area to be within the suburban neighborhood character area. And again, the intent of the suburban neighborhood character area is to ensure that any existing residential neighborhoods, no zoning or land uses be introduced that would have a negative impact on residential development or the development pattern that we see established, that character of the area. And currently, the subject property is well suited for this area based on the existing development with two single-family detached dwellings. The proposal we can see here on a rough site plan would be to, and this is inverted, so north is actually in the opposite direction that you see notated on the site plan submitted by the petitioner. And you can see that part of their proposal would be the addition of a pavilion along their driveway just north of their home, which is toward the southern end of the subject property. And it would also have accompanying parking area for any of the attendees to any of the special events that would be hosted on this pavilion. This is open-air pavilion proposed, so this is not an enclosed building that's being proposed. It would be an open-air pavilion for family event space. And based on that characteristic, a number of vehicle trips would be generated. Somewhere between 20 to 60 vehicles per event are estimated by the petitioner in their application. And of course, those would be two vehicle trips coming and going for every vehicle. And again, just want to point out that the current access through Livingston Way is not a public road. It's not public road frontage. It's a small private access easement that other multiple single-family detached residences rely on for their access. So this would generate traffic that would impact a number of adjacent properties that share that access easement. So there's some concern from staff's perspective as to the long-term maintenance and shared liability of that access road and the impact that this additional traffic might have on those residences that would be immediately affected by that traffic generation. Also, the fact that this would generate a certain amount of noise. While the petitioner did notate in their application that they would install some noise monitoring equipment to regulate the decibels of any music that would be projected from the subject property. We, of course, know that's a difficult thing to regulate long-term. And based on that proximity, as you can see there on the site plan, fairly close, within a few hundred feet of several residential properties that are separate from the subject property and petitioner. So there's a number of single-family residential tracts that stand to be impacted by this proposed special use event center. One of the reasons why this is a special use in the general agriculture zone district is oftentimes that zone district is in a fairly low-density, well-separated area as opposed to a more residential area with single-family and more suburban style that we see surrounding most of the subject property. So with all that in consideration, the staff recommendation is not to approve the special use permit for an event center based on the impact it may have on the adjacent single-family residential development. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
No questions, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mays?
So my name is Abrido, but I don't speak good English. He's my translator.
Well, I helped them put everything together to present to the board, so I'm very familiar with the property. But what is intended to be applied for now is a special permit in order to use the pavilion that he's had built on his property to have access for public use, rental, with rental agreements, security, As far as the sound that he was concerned about, yes, sound is an issue. We tried to address that in order to minimize the impact that, and believe it or not, I mean, you can't control sound. This room right here is pretty much, in essence, an example of that. So with that being said, I don't think that his intention is to bother any of the neighbors. I noticed that on the picture that you showed for the GIS, you showed 2 entrances, but Beulah Drive, he has the right of way to access Beulah Drive from his property, and that goes into Green Acres subdivision, straight shot into Cleveland Highway. And of course, you said the amount of traffic that would come in. Granted, not everybody arrives to an event at the same time. Not everybody leaves an event at the same time. So we're not talking about street-type traffic, one car behind another car, et cetera. More or less, you're talking about periodic traffic, just like every other day in the neighborhood. Livingston Way, he's been keeping up that driveway. He has the equipment, he has the tractors in order to be able to keep that well, what is it? Probably about 300 feet? 300 feet of a driveway. And the other driveway that he showed on the GIS picture that's adjacent to the following street, Diamond Way, right? Diamond Way. He didn't even know he had access to that, and he's never used that as a right-of-way. It actually curves, and when you look at the GIS, it stops, and it's not even accessible, really, as far as the driveway into his property. But he does have the documentation on his deed that gives him the right of way, or the entrance point, which he reconstructed. Now, Whitfield County Fire Inspector, Fire Chief, went out there and looked at it and actually made the statement that the Beulah Drive entrance was pretty solid for his vehicles to access. The erosion control, they're going to need, granted that you provide him with this permit, they're going to need the erosion and stormwater control to be processed with an engineer, and he's willing to undergo those expenses to meet the environmental issue about stormwater. As far as the septic issue, that's been addressed too with environmental health. And pending you guys approving the special permit, he'll have to go through and get the soil sample in order to have substantial bathrooms installed next to the pavilion. Now, the pavilion's 60 by 100. It's a commercially bought metal building structure. He got a permit with the building inspectors to put it in. It's laying on concrete. And he hasn't done any other type of disturbance because everything's pending the situation, whether or not it's allowed. Granted, he doesn't want to be a nuisance to anybody else. He's trying to get the most opportunity to use his property and expand it, you know, give other people an opportunity to come out to an open environment to have a festivity. Granted, that parties wouldn't be, or festivities wouldn't be held till midnight. You know, I think we outlined that on the notes about the scheduling. And it mainly would be operational Saturdays and Sundays and holidays. And granted, it's, you know, outside environments aren't for everybody, so most people want an indoor, closed air conditioning stuff. So this is a little bit of a different aspect. What's the other thing?
I think that's.
The noise, with the noise, just, what is that? Bear Park, the downtown park, the pavilion, prime example, it can be done.
Yeah.
So you can control it. You can control a lot of the issues that are at hand. Now, he's had 3 personal family gatherings there, 3 events. And he's had issues with law enforcement coming out there, and they just turn around and say, everything's fine, and pretty much leave.
Private party.
Let them party.
Private party.
And, yeah, the location of the location on the drawing, it's small. The pavilion is small. The lines going across, I'm like, counting
rough.
lines.
It's rough drawing.
Yeah.
We understand.
So,
Okay.
pretty much that's pretty much it. Just wanted to give a little bit more clarification about it.
Very good, thank you. Anybody else who'd like to speak in favor? Anybody who'd like to speak in opposition? All right,
I'm sorry.
in favor?
Yes, sir.
Come on up.
Thank you. I get nervous. So, hi, my name is Luz Montoya, and I am a realtor with Keller Williams Greater Dalton. I have known Brigido Mesa since I was 15 years old, a long time ago. He comes from a great family that came here and has worked hard, tries not to get in trouble. So with that being said, I mean, he's married, he's got a beautiful family. He's basically trying to create this. I know he hosted his daughter's quinceañera at this place, and I was I was invited. And to be honest with you, I'm one of those people that don't like to bother anyone. So as soon as I got there, I'm like, okay, how are the neighbors, you know, dealing with this? I didn't hear any noise going down. On my way out, we rolled down the windows because I was concerned, you know, I was like, okay, this is a property. I've sold a house right across from his house, and I was like, okay, how are they hearing this? I'll be honest with you, we didn't hear any noise. They had securities, they had everything going on. With that being said, a lot of the families here in Dalton, I know a lot of people that have, like, for example, quinceañeras, wedding. I'm right now working with a family that's trying to find a place like this, but we don't have anything like that to offer. So they're having to look at Tunnel Hill. So basically try to go out, or Ringgold, Chattanooga, Tennessee, anywhere they can find a place like what he's trying to offer. If you go back to that map, there has actually been 2 event centers. One is Blanca's venue. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's just, I mean, down the road from his. And that's also around like different houses. There's also the bowling alley, which they have an event center there at the corner. Right behind of it, they have a lot of homes. So, I mean.
On the highway.
Yes, sir. Well, on the highway, but I mean, like right behind it. No, the homes are right behind it. Yes. So this is gonna be similar to like the Creative Arts Skill. They have their rules. You have to follow them. We're in the process of renting them. I mean, music stops at 11 o'clock, and they do have like a lot of homes around it. So that was, I mean, I recommend, that they approve it. He's gonna follow the rules and do everything that the county requires.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, anybody like to speak in opposition? Ma'am in red? You filled out a piece of paper? There you go.
My name's Cynthia Dillard, and we own property on Livingston Way, adjacent to Mr. Alphonse Flores or Mesa property. Okay, we've been dealing with this problem for the last couple of years. The excessive traffic, the loud music. I've got a petition signed by 44 people on Livingston Way, Beulah Drive, Avis Drive, and Brooker Drive, opposing this permit. I have a call log from Whitfield County also, as many times as we've had to call regarding the loud music. And it goes on till 1 and 2 o'clock in the morning. So, and we're concerned with the evaluation of our property. You know, nobody this event center was in a few hundred feet of, you know, this surrounding residents. And the road that he says he keeps up it's reeked of potholes right now. We have to keep that road up. We're retired, and, you know, we live on a fixed income. We can't afford to have the road kept up. He has graded the road a couple of times, but if you go out there and look at it, it's reeked of potholes. We've counted as many as 50 to 75 vehicles in one event go up our little narrow one-lane gravel road. So it's a problem, and it's going to continue to get worse if you approve this.
All right. Thank you, ma'am. Do you have that,
I got a permit and I got a call log.
that you had
I'm sorry.
a list of names?
Yes.
Petition?
Yes. There's the petition, and here's the call log if you're interested.
No, this is good enough.
Oh, yeah, you know, okay,
Names and
thank you
addresses.
so much.
Anybody else would like to speak in opposition? I'll take one more.
Hi, I'm Sharon King, and I've lived there 70-something years. And I live adjoining her property, well, on the corner of Livingston Way and Brooker Drive. I have never seen the traffic when they have their events. They are lined up this way and this way, turning in a little bitty one-lane road. And the music goes on for hours, and it is so loud. And all the neighbors are tired of it. They ask for us to be our voices, their voices, because they're tired of it. And I've lived there 70-something years, we've never had any problems. It's a quiet neighborhood. And people mind their own business. And they're considerate of the other residents. But this is not consideration.
Understand. Are you on this list?
Yes.
Petition? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, just take one. This is the last one. I think we're hitting on the same issues.
Good evening. My name's Reyes Martinez, and I reside on Macaulay subdivision right on Beulah Drive, 701. Earlier this year, there has been an opening on what they want to use as an entrance on the south end of Beulah Drive. Now, there was a paved section that goes into Mrs. Dyer's property because she has a carport or a garage on the side. Now, after that paved section, there was dirt, there was vegetation. Earlier this year, all of that has been cleaned out, and there has been an entrance with a gate, which is maintained open at all times. And what happens is the traffic is immense. In and out, flying by. I have children. We used to play on the front porch, on the front yard, and we had to relocate to different section. Now, two main concerns would be safety. It would increase hazard, okay? So they can control the ambience in the event center, but they cannot control the behavior or the actions of the people that would be going into this event. Who would actually police or make them adhere to the laws, to the signage? We have 25 miles per hour signage, children at play, you know, so I have seen vehicles coming in and out through that gate, which I don't believe is a permissible easement. I tried to look, find information on it, couldn't find any.
All right.
So
So your issue is mainly traffic,
my issue is safety
safety and traffic.
and pollution as well.
Very good.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Meza, would you like to make it, come on up, make it quick. It's the last one. You do have something different to say? Or
Well, I'll just tell you.
you just tell?
My name is Donald Dillard, and I bet the
There
same
you go.
thing. Okay, I've lived there for 50 years. I've worked here all my life. Enjoy retirement. Please, the music is so loud, you can't sit in your house and watch TV without hearing boom in your ear. It gets annoying. And it's annoying outside, but to go in your house, at 38 o'clock at night, and you can't stand yourself. It gets on your nerves. The road traffic is terrible. There's not but one house up there. They tore one down, they ain't building another house up there, to my knowledge. I don't have a problem with music, but I don't want to hear your music, I don't want to hear it in my house, at night. And I've worked all my life here, been born here, raised here, worked all my life, paid my taxes. I'm entitled to a peaceful retirement where I don't have to listen to this. And the cars fly up and down the road, and they use both roads, and the dust is just immense. And Mr. Meza has graded it. Whenever he's gonna have a party, he grades that road. Before him, we kept the road up, we did everything, but there wasn't any traffic there. Me and my son owns the property across the road, and my son owns the property next to me between me and Mrs. King. But we hear music, and then that's just, we hear music loud from them, but you hear it from across where she was talking about, the houses, or the new center they built. I hadn't seen it open. I know, to my knowledge, nobody's used it, maybe they have, but we hear music even from over there. But it's just a little annoying, but it's not boom, boom, boom in your ears, like when you're sitting there. And that's just what I want to say. I've worked here all my life and paid my taxes. I'm entitled to see some peace in my retirement. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, Mr. Meza, the comments have been traffic and noise. Comments short and sweet.
Sí.
2021.
20, más o menos. Muy bien.
20.
Sí, que
Ay.
ese es un problema
So-
que ellos tuvieron desde que llegamos, que porque traen ellos, los que pasen, pues pasan mis hijos y ellos les dicen cosas y todo eso.
I don't know if you guys remember whenever he asked for the agricultural rezoning. You guys remember that meeting? Okay. Well, I was there to help him represent himself for the simple fact that I cleared that property. That property was devastated, forestry, cleaning, brush, lumps and everything. Now let me get to the point why I'm going with this. That was in 2020
So that-
that he bought that, 2021. He built his house by 2022. He barely put this pavilion up last June of last year, okay? He has not been cited one ticket for noise disturbance by the law enforcement that's been called out there. He stated to me just now that it's more of a personal matter that's been going on between the neighbors on Livingston Way, now on Beulah Drive, that's been an entrance since he had the property. That I used that entrance to bring in my equipment. And that's the point that his kids get dropped off from the school bus. You understand? Yes, you can't control traffic in any one neighborhood. Maybe that's an issue that might have been addressed 20 years ago with speed bumps, because it's a straightaway. It's got 2 stops, but that's a whole different matter.
Yeah, but there weren't people coming, numerous people. That's the problem.
Well, To that, it was a personal party gathering that he was having. As part of a commercial aspect, going into doing business, if he's going to fork up additional expenses, stormwater control is not cheap. Septic systems, environmental health systems for an event center like this is not cheap. So he's not playing to try to get something that costs a nuisance to anybody else. You understand? As far as the Livingston Way, I even looked at him and I said, why don't you just pave it? Be done with it. And you gotta understand, when you buy a piece of property that comes with a right-of-way, it's a right-of-way. So that's the issue. But with that being said, he's not joking around about trying to disturb anybody else. He wants to have a family-oriented activity. He wants to invest something further on to the future. He doesn't want to have chicken houses. You understand? He doesn't want to have any of that, but he wants to do something that's going to be prosperous in a nice area.
Okay, very good. Thank you. All right, that said, we're going to close the public portion on this request now. This next one is to hear the recommendation regarding the request with Whitfield County Board of Commissioners and the City of Dalton to amend the Unified Zoning Ordinance for a planned unit development. This is the county and the city.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This proposal is before us would affect the Unified Zoning Ordinance as well as multiple jurisdictions. This proposal has come about as a redevelopment tool in order to create some creative redevelopment opportunities for areas in our metropolitan statistical area, which we have a map of that is part of the staff analysis, and we can see that here on the screen. So that area in blue overlaid on this map represents the metropolitan statistical area as set by the U.S. Census. And so within that blue boundary would be what this text amendment would affect. And what this would essentially do is allow an urban planned unit development. And this would function very similarly to our existing planned unit development, where petitioners bring forth a site design that would then be addressed by staff, and a recommendation would be given on whether to approve or to deny, and it would be based specifically on the site plan. And based on the differences between the existing planned unit development and what this urban PUD, planned unit development, would allow would be that currently to have a planned unit development, you have to have a minimum of 15 acres. This urban planned unit development doesn't have any minimum lot size, but it does have a maximum of 8 acres in size. So any development that would be larger than 8 acres would have to utilize one of our conventional zone districts, or if it's large enough, a conventional PUD, planned unit development. So this is just to create a little bit more flexibility and address specific developments that, if they're approved, they would be held to the standards of their site plan in perpetuity until either they are rezoned or they request rezoning to be changed. So this would, as opposed to a conventional zone district to allow a lot of flexibility, the planned unit development will be based specifically and solely on their site plan. And of course, this will include architectural standards and various other standards to ensure that the development that occurs is quality development, but would allow the density necessary to satisfy workforce and attainable housing. So there's a number of pages here associated with our creating this additional zone district for the Unified Zoning Ordinance. And again, this would affect multiple jurisdictions, but would be confined to that blue overlay on the map you see on the screen, confined to our metropolitan statistical area. If anyone has any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
None? Thank you.
Thank you.
We do have, we have a representative. First of all, we're going to open it up to anybody who would like to speak in favor of this. Yeah. This, I think, this presentation here might help some people understand what's going on here.
Good evening. I'll show this to you guys, and then I'll be happy to turn it around. This is just an example of what the UPUD would provide for. And so just kind of a little bit of background. In 2018, the Greater Dalton Chamber and Believe Greater Dalton did a housing study to determine the status of the housing in our community. What that report said is that we were vastly understocked in available product, and that the product we had didn't quite meet the needs and the desires of people that were trying to live here and work here. And so because of that, we worked hard to try to figure out ways to add housing stock. And I'm going to turn this around so they can see. And this is just an example, but as a result of that, we started studying different ways to bring affordable, attainable, and even desirable housing to our community. And one of the ways to do that, especially in the urbanized areas or in the cities, would be to have a more dense neighborhood, right? So smaller lot sizes, but architectural controls that require the houses be built to certain standards, like hardy board instead of vinyl siding, brick, and that nature. And so this UPUD language that you see is what would be used to create a neighborhood like this. And this is a design that we have come up with a piece of property that's owned by the city of Dalton. We've done this at with their permission and at their request. And this is a real plan that we hope to build. You couldn't do this neighborhood on this property without about a dozen variances if you had C1A zoning on the property. But what that does is that opens up a lot of avenues for people to take liberties that you might not foresee or appreciate down the road. And so this UPUD language puts barriers in place, restrictions in place to make sure that somebody's building something that's not going to hurt the neighbor's property, adds value, but then allows to add affordable, attainable, and attractive housing to smaller areas. And so the language that you have would allow this. Like I said, this is a real plan we hope to take forward. We're in the process of designing the streets now, and when I say that, we've got 30% plans drawn by an engineer. They're working on finishing those now. We have requested a grant to help pay for those streets. And the goal for that is to make these houses affordable, right? So we're talking about building homes under $300,000. Those are hard to find in our community. And these are nice homes. They're small homes. They're not tiny homes. Don't think about rolling one off the back of a truck or something like that. These are craftsman-style built homes, but they're not large. And so, and then also the design is efficiently built to use less space. When the language was being crafted, Robert Smalley, Jake Bearden, several of the folks that do the sign-offs on permitting for developments, they all were weighing in on what's important for safety and things like that. So everything that you see here works with what all of those entities need. And so this is the example, but this would be the model to allow folks to take this type plan and go forward in the urbanized areas if they want to do a development like this in the future.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Anybody else would like to speak
I have a question
on this issue?
Is it more oriented like towards homes or like apartments?
Single-family homes.
Okay.
Single-family homes. I think we're getting a lot of apartments lately.
Yeah. A
There
lot
are,
in the city.
there are duplexes allowed in that as well.
Can you point out where that is to the audience?
Sure.
Some people
You
may-
can't really see it here, but what I'll show you is Hamilton Street is here. So if you think about, if you're going south on Hamilton Street from downtown and you go past Guadalajara Restaurant on the left and Dollar General in Brivens Plaza South on the right, just past that building there's a grass strip. Mohawk donated that land to the city in 2010. It's been required to be a green space ever since. And so when companies started talking to us about trying to fix the housing problem for workers, workforce housing and affordable housing, we started trying to figure out if you could do something on this piece of property. So that's kind of how that started.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else who'd like to speak on this issue, on this change?
Jake, I know the blue is the urban area by federal definition, but nobody knows if they're in an urban area or not. But everybody knows if they're in the city of Dalton or they're not in the city of Dalton, which that's mostly what that is, just not all of it. Is it a problem just to start it in just the city limits of Dalton, assuming they want it? Or what would be the disadvantage of limiting it to Dalton?
No, sir, it would not. The reason we wanted to use the statistical area is because that's defined by the United States Census Bureau. And not only does it give developers within the city limits of Dalton the ability to use this, but it also gives someone in the unincorporated Whitfield County to use it as well. We just didn't want to
But it
limit.
still had to be in the blue area. It wouldn't be the whole county.
Right, right. The blue area represents approximately 4 square miles around the city limits of Dalton. And again, we just wanted to make sure that everyone in the community could come to the table and use this should they choose to do so.
And Tunnel Hill's in blue, but they're not part of our planning, so they wouldn't really be.
Tunnel Hill participates in the metropolitan statistical area, so we do handle transportation planning for Tunnel Hill, but they do not participate in the unified zoning ordinance. So that area, again, it is statistical area, but Tunnel Hill would be out, yes.
All right. Thank you, Jake. All right, without further comment, we will close the public portion on this, and the county commissioners will be leaving us at this time. We do have one last request, which is in the city of Dalton. It is by Carlos Miranda. Change from C1 to R3, 1123 Trammell Street. Yeah, is he here? All right, very good, thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have here a request before us to rezone from neighborhood commercial C1 to medium density R3. So going from commercial to residential in this case. And if we take a quick look at the subject property being within the city of Dalton, you can see it lies there on a corner lot. And the subject property is currently zoned C1 commercial, and you'll see that sort of pinkish color on the zoning map that represents the neighborhood commercial zone district. And you'll also see the medium density residential zone district in that green color to the south, southwest of the subject property. So you can see an established residential character area here in specifically in the R3 zone district. So if this rezoning were approved, it would change the color of the zoning map at this location from pink to green. So you can see that both of those zone districts are well established in this area, and the subject property lies directly on the border between these two districts. Here we can see the existing development around the subject property. We do see some commercial development, of course, around the intersection. But we also do see, more particularly to the south and to the west, we see residential single-family development, just like the zoning map would indicate. And even some of those tracts of land adjacent to the subject property that were zoned for neighborhood commercial are in fact currently utilized for single-family detached residential and have been for a number of years. The subject property itself contains an aging single-family detached dwelling. This would allow the petitioner to remodel this structure, occupy the structure, things to that nature, and it would be able to be used for residential purposes. The R3 zone district would be the appropriate zone district for a property of this size and character based on its existing development and the development of adjacent property. The future development map shows this to be within the suburban neighborhood character area, given, again, the existing neighborhood development, mostly single-family residential adjacent to the subject property. There would be no negative impact of this rezoning on any of the adjacent residential properties. It would have the same zoning as they would, and it would allow the same character of single-family, medium-density residential to exist here, as it has in the past. So citing no issues, staff would give a recommendation to approve. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
No questions. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Carlos Miranda? Any further comments?
I just want to touch base on it. Also, this is like my first time doing any of this, so
That's all right.
it's a little nerve wracking. But really, it's just we have the property and plan on fixing that house and making it livable, either for me or some of my other family members. It's in a really good area, so it just seems like a good idea to go through with that for us, as well as like the properties next to it. I know there's to the left of the house, which is also still zoned for residential commercial. It's just more buildings that aren't really occupied. There's nothing really going on over there. So yeah, that's really just kind of what we're doing with it. A place for myself or some of my other family to live as well. In the plan for that, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else like to speak in favor? Anybody like to speak in opposition? Very good. That closes the public portion of this meeting. We will be going into deliberations. You're welcome to stay, but you cannot participate. But I'd like to take a quick 5 minute.
Okay.
I didn't mean to call Paul in.
It's all right. We're just going to take a 5 minute break.
Stand up.
Yeah, we can stand.
Eric picked the wrong one to duck out of. We were gone by 7:40 last night.
Yeah, you did. You picked the wrong one. You thought you were.
I don't really like these.
Well, run, take me one if you thought you were.
Well, I'll tell you the one.
It's, Charlie and his girlfriend are home, and I was supposed to be hanging out with him.
Yeah, Luke and his girlfriend are at the house. We just got back from Montana. We lost a heartbreaker in overtime last Friday night.
Two-point conversion, devastating. We were pulling for y'all.
Luke got hurt about 3 series ago. He didn't play the last 2 or 3
All right, guys, you wanna,
Luke was a little thing right there. I think that got him.
Never even heard of that till Chip heard.
sneak on over.
I never had no blades.
Let's get out of here.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, first one.
Kelly, Fanny.
Yeah, let's tell these people to either quit.
All right. Ladies, gentlemen, can y'all, keep... Yeah. So we can hear each other? Thank you. The first request is with the Eileen Kelly and the Finney.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion to approve. Chris seconds, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. The second one, I hear the recommendation for the amendment to Unified Zoning Ordinance. An issue is whether they have final, the city, what they call it,
Have to be done by special use permit.
special use, special use. Yeah. A special use permit. Any comments?
If I'm understanding it correctly, what this is saying, in order to have, what do they call it, feeding, no, they have to get a permit for it. And if they don't get the permit, then they can't do it. So,
If it's within the city of Dalton, which is really not going to be applicable, it
Yeah.
mainly applies to
Varnell.
Varnell,
yes.
of which there is some considerable acreage, north of 100 acres, that's zoned general agriculture, but still is within the city limits. The city of Varnell would like to have the opportunity to look at the proposed plan and have the opportunity to, approve or turn it down instead of just approving it because it's zoned general agriculture, if I
Or
understand
because
that
because
correctly.
it meets the federal standards.
Right.
What the final say over the federal
Yeah.
standards.
Well, is this the same thing as our normal zoning, where then the county commissioners have, all we're doing is making a recommendation? Or is this a different,
Yes, we would be making a recommendation,
we would
which
say we'd be making a recommendation to the
the
county
two
commissioners?
mayors and councils and the board of commissioners would then make the decision to approve or
But
deny.
that, are we including wording that says they have the right to demand a special use permit or require a special use permit?
You would
In addition.
recommending the text amendment to the Unified Zoning Ordinance to require.
Include that. Include that too. Right.
Recommendation to approve staff.
What are your thoughts, Chris?
I mean, somebody's got properties, zoned general agriculture, and I understand the thought process, if it's my land. But I also understand, being within a growing residential area that's within a city, limit and that particular governing body, having the opportunity to give a extra look at something that is potentially impactful as a large poultry or swine operation, instead of just granting permits. Now, I understand why they want to have this text amendment. I understand individual property rights and that sort of thing too, but, I get it.
So this is simply adding another layer of checks in order to somebody creating another.
Just within basically the city limits of Varnell. Right, which, I don't know what the number of acres Whitfield County has. I know it's a lot, but you're talking about somewhere north of 100 acres. 100 to 200 acres. And, that's really not that much land. These poultry operations now, I mean, they're not like they were 30 years ago. If you do a new poultry operation, it's big. I mean, the economy of scale is, the ones I've seen in the last 5 or 6 years are,
It's corporate.
yeah, Yeah, it's not a farmer with a couple of chicken houses like you grew up seeing, you know, it's very commercial.
So, wording.
I mean,
Make a motion to include.
I would cite, yeah, I'd make a motion to approve citing staff analysis. So,
Okay, without the special use.
no, that's.
no, I think that is the staff analysis.
Yeah, it's in there.
It's in there, okay.
Yeah.
I thought it wasn't. You made the motion?
Yes.
David makes the motion, and Eric seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Okay, Shazman Ali, Antioch Road.
We wanted to do we could switch it to R3.
R3.
No.
I'd have been okay with R5, but I'm certainly okay with R3.
This is the one staff was to deny, right?
Yes.
Oh, but he's okay with R3.
His neighbors were okay with R3.
I think he was, wasn't
He
What?
was.
he? He was.
Yeah, no, and I said, I think his neighbor was for
Okay.
it as well,
Yes.
so I
Okay.
understand it.
Okay, motion?
I make a motion, we approve R3.
Jody makes motion to approve R3, and
Second.
Chris seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Jerry and Barbara Hawkins.
Move approve.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. This is the one with the trailers down 41 South.
Now, I believe Ethan's recommendation also included a buffer on the north side.
Yeah.
That's not required, that's, yes. I would second it with that
And
condition.
Mr. Hawkins, I believe, stated that there's already natural growth there that he was not gonna touch.
Yeah, but I think it was very low natural growth.
You know, I would not want to require him to go plant trees or anything in there. I mean, I'm familiar with that area. You know, if they just left it natural, vegetative, and let it grow, I think it'd be fine.
Okay, so who was the motion? You made the motion? No?
I did.
Chris made the motion.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Okay. This is one on Cleveland Highway, was to split it between a R2 and C2 and R5.
Jamie White, move approve.
Second.
Chris moves it. Dave seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Aniagua. R2 to GA.
It's 6 acres.
This one is, trying to remember. Yeah,
I'll make the motion to approve.
Eric makes a motion to approve.
Second.
Jody seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All
Aye.
opposed? The ayes have it. Megan Elliott.
Motion to approve.
David makes a motion to approve.
Second.
That was with the condition
Condition?
on site analysis?
Yeah, site, or staff analysis. It's David and Chris. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Jose Gomez. This one to used car sales on the church building up Freeport, Waring Road.
I mean, it'd be an island down there. There's no way to create the buffer because of it's non-conforming now. I mean,
I agree.
you know, just move we deny.
Chris makes a motion to deny for staff analysis.
Hey, staff analysis, Ethan, in your staff analysis, is that a typo in yours with the recommendation?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah, to approve.
double checking. That's what, I mean, I made them one.
Okay,
Okay.
Chris first. Second?
Second.
Sorry, I'm losing track.
I don't know
Jody
who was-
seconds, all in favor, say aye for denial.
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Vernon Gordon. This one is,
So they talked about,
Keith was okay with, a condition of no mobile homes or duplexes.
yeah.
that's not in the staff analysis though, is it?
So I would move to approve with those conditions.
Second.
Chris makes a motion, David seconds. Did you get that, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, but you got the condition? David? Why is this Vernon Gordon and Chris Talent, I keep getting mixed up. Chris Talent, landscaping supply business on the Cleveland Highway across from the old chenille place.
I mean, he's taken every effort to mitigate any concern for his neighbor. I move we approve.
Yeah, and with the, I mean, because it sounds like the neighbor really would prefer he not put a buffer there.
The immediate neighbor, yeah.
Yeah, does that need to be in the recommendation since the buffer is required? Okay.
Okay, so I'd like to amend my motion to include, non-requirement of the buffer on the Cleveland Highway.
On the north side.
North side.
North side of the property. Second?
Second.
David seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the ayes have it. This is the special event venue. Comments? Personally, I went out that road, and it's tight. It is a small, quiet neighborhood. Very, very quiet. The drive. And he's saying that's just a pavilion, which to me means no walls, right?
Yeah, it's loud. I move we deny.
Chris makes a motion to deny.
Second.
Jody seconds. All in favor of denial, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. For denial. Okay, the urban PUD, I think sounds like a good deal.
It's another tool in the toolbox.
Hmm?
Tool in the toolbox.
Sure, haven't heard that one in a while.
But yeah, I think, when used,
Yeah, when used correctly.
you know, in certain situations, particularly considering that our
Well,
PUDs currently have to be so large
yeah,
in the more populated areas as far as infill, that sort of thing, this could be a good tool.
well, they're talking about, I mean,
It also allows,
affordable housing, you
it
know?
also allows a lot more control over the type of
Yeah.
homes that are being built in these sort of infill projects.
So motion? David?
So moved.
David makes a motion to approve. Chris seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. And Alice Miranda. Non-conforming house, that one's what out there near Salvation Army, I think it is.
I was trying to figure out where that was.
I think that's in a
Right at the
curve.
corner of Trammell and Main Street and
Yeah, but isn't that the Salvation Army right there?
yes.
He's just
Just before you get to the hospital?
trying to
Fix it up.
fix it up.
Yeah, just fix it up and get it going.
Make a motion to approve.
Eric makes a motion to approve.
Second.
Jody seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. We have a Ryman Farm plat. Here she comes.
All right, guys, this is.
Better not be coming near my house.
And then usually, I've never asked you to do anything like this before. This is a city plat, major subdivision,
They've already done
new
this.
roads, new lots. You guys know what this is,
Yeah.
Ryan Farm.
They've already started developing this a long time
It's
ago.
been going on for years now.
But I mean, this particular,
It has.
Yeah.
Been going on for several years. They have just a few items on their punch list. This is 17 acres, 2,000 feet of new roads, 34 new lots. What we're gonna ask you to do, if you don't mind, because you're not gonna meet again until January 22nd, is give staff permission to make sure that all the items on that punch list are fulfilled. There are some that Darwin Utilities has, some that Public Works has, some that the fire department has, just a few, but some. If you will conditionally approve it, so that we don't have to wait until January 22nd to get full approval, and rely on staff to make sure that all those items are taken care of before any signatures are placed on the plat.
okay.
You can say no to that if you want to. You can wait until it's signed by everybody, and I'll bring it back on January
Yeah.
22nd.
I don't
see any reason to cause any undue delay. Well,
No. I mean, they've moved a lot of dirt in the last 2
Let's
years.
just sign off.
We will not put any signatures on there until they do everything that they're supposed to do. Oh, did I not even give you a picture of the plat?
No, just look at the picture.
All we're doing is looking at the trees.
I was wondering where they're gonna cut that road.
Oh, that makes sense.
Well, I'm sure it's within though. It's just not a very good looking house.
34 more new lots down there.
Okay. So the road does not tie into
So it's coming
Wisteria, it's all
in.
that.
Yeah.
But it does tie, in two places, ties
It
into
ties
two
back in.
existing roads,
Yeah.
then it has cul-de-sac.
But this is just deepening Ryman Farm?
So-
Yes, deepening to the
And they
southeast.
will not be coming back out on Thread Mill. There's gonna be a note put on the plat that they cannot access Thread Mill
But they
from
go,
this
but there
part.
is an access to
They
it.
can go out the gate, but they can't,
Oh, the properties,
lots
the lots can.
cannot have frontage on both roads, or cannot access both roads.
How many more plots in there?
34.
Wow. We don't need that many more big houses.
Well, that's fine. Big houses.
Like, we don't need that many more big houses.
No.
We need moderate houses.
You need whatever people want to buy.
Yeah,
I know.
the Kennard is still in this,
Well,
right?
there's none of these houses either there. There's no
Yeah.
$800,000
What happened to what happened to people downsizing?
Well, there are. They're just selling for 1.1 million.
What'd you say?
I said there are $800,000 houses for sale in our community. They're just selling for 1.1 million.
Yeah. True.
Just like the $500,000 houses are selling for
Do we
800.
need to vote on this, or?
Yes, I need you.
I move we approve to
us
give them the authority to.
Okay,
Second.
Chris?
Second.
David seconds.
Aye.
Chris? and then
Chris,
David,
David.
too. All in favor of? All opposed?
Merry Christmas.
There you go.
Okay.
Hey, Jody,
You guys did a